All right, there we go. Good morning, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. Wonderful. I've got the video spotlighted on me, not because I'm vain, um, but although that might be true, but because for recording purposes, it is much better for permissions and everything to post these on Blackboard if it's just the instructor. If the videos involve you guys for a lengthy period of time, I have to get like permissions, like signed statements from everyone in the video, according to the university, to like record and post this stuff. It's part of your student rights and it's part of your like privacy agreement with the college and all that stuff. So that's why the video is going to be spotlighted on me most of the time that we do these things this semester. So yeah, how are you guys all doing today? Good, bad, indifferent? I mean, you're here. And so Jen is like, yes. You guys are present. You're making it through the first week of the semester. You know, life continues apace, even though we're living in interesting times. It's interesting to be teaching modern history as history is being made pretty much every week right now. And we'll have plenty of time to talk at the end of the class, like at the end of the semester, we'll be talking about like what's happening in 2021. And that should be a lot of fun. So, but we're not quite there yet. All right, what we're doing today is going over the documents, the two perspectives from the past documents, the ones out of the smaller book. This is going to be our Friday routine, more or less, is going over these bad boys. And for this week, you've got two of them. Most weeks you'll be looking at two or three. Like, I don't think I ever assign more than three ever on a weekly basis. And that's to make things manageable. Because as you've no doubt noticed, some of these documents can be kind of thick, like they can be sort of dense. Like, was that any of your guys' impression? Did you have a hard time reading one or two of these? Yeah, it's okay if you did. Because this is old-timey, smart guys ruminating about abstract ideals like justice and law, and they do so in the most like long-winded way possible. You know, like the way that you proved you were smart in the Enlightenment was to just like make as many run-on sentences as you could, talking about how smart you are, and that's reflected, you know, in guys like, especially Rousseau. The documents do get easier the closer we get to the present day. They become more readable. We're like, oh, okay, this guy's talking in plain English. But, you know, it's a little rough to start out. So what we're going to be doing today is talking about these two documents, their significance to the Enlightenment, and then what we're going to be doing, I'll switch over and I'll show you guys, because your first analysis paper is next week, I'm going to be spending a bit of time today, and probably Tuesday as well, next week, talking about that, because everything that we're going over today is directly relevant to the assignment for next week. All right, so let's start out with the easier one, Bonesana. Bonesana is an Enlightenment thinker, and his whole thing is about crime and punishment. A little bit of background for you guys. As you no doubt have read in the textbook pages that I posted, and also in this book, the Enlightenment thinkers are concerned about ideas of like society, like what is society, what's the best way of running a society, because at this point most Europeans, and we haven't really like gotten to the Americas quite yet, like we've settled, you know, like Europeans have settled in the Americas, but the center of Western civilization is still in Europe. So we're going to be talking about Europe for a long time. These guys lived under despotic kings. The kings could do almost whatever they wanted. And there's no such thing as like checks and balances. There's no such thing as like laws that apply equally to everybody in a country. And so these Enlightenment thinkers are thinking like, okay, how can we make society better, right? Bonesana, his whole shtick is crime and punishment. Like, what's the point of having laws, and what are laws supposed to do? What is a good law as opposed to a bad law? So I guess this is my intro question. After having read this document, what are laws according to Bonesana, right? What's the point of having laws? What are they there for? What are they good for? Yeah, Jenna.
This is just what I have for the question.
Yeah.
He says that the laws are the conditions under which men naturally independent united themselves in society.
Okay, perfect. So he lays it out
So,
right
like,
there. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. If you had more. I'm getting a delay on my end. So, yeah, he lays it out right there on the top of page 605. Jenna's absolutely right. Laws are the conditions under which men naturally independent united themselves in a society. Okay, what does he mean by naturally independent? What do you think that means? Yeah, is it McKenna? Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah, Randall.
Okay, Randall.
Which book are you on?
We're doing this one. We're perspectives from the past. Yeah, it's just historical documents as opposed to the textbook.
Page 605.
Yeah, the document starts on 604, but it's basically 605 is where things really.
Okay.
So
okay.
What does he mean by men, and by men he means all humans, right? He's speaking in very sexist language because that's what people did. But people are naturally independent. What do you think that means? Naturally independent. Any ideas?
Kind of like isolators. We isolate ourselves for the most part, and we kind of stay to our own kind of group.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, I have a bird, so he won't stop whistling.
That's all right. No, but I heard you. So Dylan says, like, people are sort of naturally inclined to do what they want. Sometimes they form these loose groups, which is absolutely right. If you go all the way back to like prehistoric times, we're talking about like, small groups of individuals or, tribes or something. But when we unite in a society with like thousands of other people, we need something to bind us together, right? We need some kind of rule book for us to all get along, otherwise things turn into chaos, right? So this is what laws are. In a modern society, the laws of the nation or country or whatever our social unit is bind us together because naturally we're like just loners, like Dylan said. We're just kind of singular people. But if you want to work together with other people, you need to abide by a common set of rules. That's what laws are. Okay, so if we don't have laws, what happens? Like what does Bonesana say? Like if we don't have laws or good laws, how does that impact society? And as you're getting a feel for these documents, you'll come to these answers a lot sooner. But this is kind of what we're going to be doing every Friday. Is like I'm going to be pitching you guys questions, and we're going to be talking about it as though we're in a classroom together. And that helps us all understand these documents. So like what happens if we don't have laws or good laws? Yeah, Jenna.
That society will kind of go into like a chaos, and that like there won't be like any structure, like it'll just be chaos. Like there's no set rules and everything. So there's
Mhm.
basically everything is a free for all.
Yeah. Do you guys agree with that? Like laws are pretty important. It sounds, it's like, yeah, of course, like that's common sense to us right now. But people are trying to get a grasp on like what does society look like in a lawful society versus an unlawful society, right? This is the kind of the essence of Enlightenment thinking, is like starting from square one. Like, okay, you know, let's, if we're trying to figure out what we've done wrong in the past with society, just like what we had wrong with like science for a long time, we need to start at square one and kind of diagnose the problem. So society needs laws. If we don't have laws, we fall into chaos. But Bonesana takes it a step further. He starts talking about justice, which is different than just having laws. What is justice then? It's not just having a legal system. Like every country has a legal system, but not every country has justice. Not every society has justice. What is that then? What is this ideal of justice? According to the document. Jenny, you're killing it today. I want to hear from someone else. Who wants to take a stab? Yeah, Lindsay.
On the top of page 606, he says that like justice is the idea of anything real, like physical power or anything that kind of like actually exists. And then he makes a point to like talk about how he's not talking about like God, like it's a different kind of justice. And so
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, good. Anybody else have any other angles or lines that you can point to, Jack?
I was going to say, I assumed a lot of it derived from religion, but
Yeah. The Bible, you know, most people at this point in history during the Enlightenment are nominally Christian, at least. And so they're looking to the Bible for a lot of examples about like what justice is. But Lindsay's right. Like she's pointed out that like, even though there's a kind of a religious Christian element to justice, and we'll talk about that, you know, he says on the bottom of 605, right before the line that Lindsay points out, the very last paragraph that continues into the next page on 605. Observe that by justice I understand nothing more than the bond which is necessary to keep the interest of individuals united, without which men would return to their original state of barbarity. And then he talks about, you know, punishments that exceed the necessity of preserving this bond are in their nature unjust. Who wants to like sum up what he's talking about here? What is he getting at? What is justice? It's not just what God tells us to in Scripture, right? But what else is justice?
kind of saying like for robbery, you shouldn't have like your hand cut off.
Yeah, if laws
Like
are
stealing
necessary.
an apple.
Yeah, exactly. You know, we could, I don't know, think of like the old like Aladdin movie, like the cartoon, right? Where like Aladdin's trying to steal an apple in the market, and like the guy, you know, goes to like chop his hand off when he gets caught. Bonesana would say that's ridiculous, right? Like, is that what you're getting at, Jack?
Yeah, like the biblical punishment, old time. You just,
Yeah.
or like,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, eye for an eye kind of thing. No, he's saying that laws that punish out of proportion to the crime, that's injustice. So we have laws. Laws are important to society. If we don't have laws, that's bad. We fall into chaos. But you know what else causes chaos is bad laws, or laws that say, you know, if you try and nab an apple from the local market and you get your hand cut off, how does that make any sense, right? How is that justice? How is that applying the law in a fair way to fit the crime? This is the essence of what he's talking about. Like, justice is fairness, right? Justice is the law not coming down like a boot on the neck of society. And this is still something that we're wrestling with today. But justice is applying the law in a fair way to all people in a society, right? So, so he goes on, he talks about torture then. What's the role of torture? Why do the kings of Europe enjoy implementing torture on their subjects? Because that's a punishment for a lot of crimes during the Enlightenment, is someone getting tortured. Yeah, Ainsley, did you have something?
Yeah, didn't they say that if they tortured people, they thought others wouldn't commit those same crimes? It would kind of make them think twice about it.
Yeah. It's to set an example. Exactly. You're absolutely right. Like the purpose of torture, and he talks about this on page 606, 607. The second column on page 606, last full paragraph. What's the political intention of punishments? To terrify and to be an example to others. And so he goes on to say, right, that in a just society, you wouldn't need to terrify your own citizens with the law. Does this sound familiar? The people wouldn't need to be afraid of punishment out of proportion to the alleged crime. They wouldn't need to be afraid of law enforcement, right? And he makes a case, this is my last question for Bonesana, that excessive punishment is not a good thing for society overall, right? Like, if we want to actually have a truly just society, and again, this is an Enlightenment guy thinking about, like, how do we make things better? His number one shtick is excessive punishment is not a good thing. Like, trying to set an example for the other citizens does not work. Do you guys agree with this? Do you think that, like, laws should be just, or should we go back to the old-timey way of, like, the government having the power to cut your hand off if you try and steal an apple? You know, what do you guys think about this? And have we actually succeeded in this ideal of making a totally just legal system?
I think there's a lot of unevenness because some things are charged like differently than others, and I just think it's not very consistent on either side.
Consistency. Yeah, we read about news articles all the time. You know, we see this happen all the time. Some rich white kid will be on probation for assaulting a woman, right? The famous example guy, oh man, what's that guy's name in Florida? That real prick, Brock something.
Brock Turner.
Thank you. Brock Turner, perfect example of this, of the unevenness of the law and how it's applied, right? Guy actually sexually assaults a classmate and essentially gets a slap on the wrist. You hear about other people from different other, like, classes or races in society doing the exact same thing and going to prison for life, you know, or talk about drug possession, you know, like, this falls unevenly on different members of society. We could talk about this all day, right? There are entire classes, criminal justice classes at Lincoln Land committed to talking about this all day. Like, you could major in it, right? the unevenness of the law is something that is inherent in modern society, and it's a problem. And Bonesana is basically one of the first guys to talk about the idea of social justice, right? Like the legal system should be fair and accessible to everyone. And when people are punished, those punishments should not include torture, because look, like, people are going to break the law, or they're going to allegedly break the law, and they shouldn't be tormented to death for doing so, right? All members of society should have some kind of belief in a legal system of fairness. And it sounds like you guys agree with that, which is probably a good thing, right? So, I mean, this is something we're still struggling with today, but it starts in the Enlightenment, this idea of like, how do we make society better? The justice system, that's one way we can do it, okay? All right, let's move on to Rousseau. Now this document, this other one, this starts on page 610 of the same book, so it comes right after Bonesana. Rousseau, this is a treatise called The Social Contract. I've read large parts of this book. It is extremely boring, but he zeroes in on one really important idea. And this idea, oh my gosh, like, it's hard to like understate or overstate how important this is. This idea ends up bringing about the idea of like democracy in the long run. So similar question to the first document. Rousseau here is talking about how to better society. Instead of justice, he's focused on what a good government looks like just in general. Like, what is it? What is a government? What is a role of government in modern society? And his first sentence on page 611, and this is another kind of French guy, you know, old dead white guy. He's ruminating about the role of people in society. He says, man is born free, and everywhere he's in chains. This is a really famous quote by Rousseau. What do you think this means? That people are born free, and yet they are restrained in some way. What do you think this means? Yeah, Jenna, what's your thoughts on this?
And this is kind of based off of what it says afterwards,
Yeah.
But that even though someone is born free, there's always going to be someone who is like making rules for them, and always going to be someone who is like have more power over them, even though you think you might have power over others. So it's just kind of this long chain of people who think that they're in charge when in reality they're not. So.
Okay, so power. There's a power structure in society that keeps people from doing just whatever they please. You know, you can walk down the street, and if someone looks at you the wrong way, you could kill them, but you would be facing repercussions for that. That's called the justice system, right? That's the law. But there's this power structure in society, right? Anybody else have any ideas of what this means to be born free but still be in chains? Any other interpretations of this? There's no right or wrong answer to this particular question. Any other ideas?
Maybe like we're all free, but like we still have to like follow the rules, and like there's still repercussions for our actions. Like we can't totally do what we want.
Okay. Yeah, we can't totally do what we want. There's consequences for our actions. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
I guess like the chains could also like be referring to laws as they keep you like back.
Okay. Yeah, so you guys are all pointing to the same thing, right? That you know, technically we have free will. People are born with free will, and yet there are certain guardrails in place that keep us from doing whatever we want. And this is called society. Bonesana refers to the legal system, to justice. What Rousseau is getting at here is government. That there is a power structure in place called government that keeps people from falling into chaos. And laws are one way of doing this, but there are many different forms of government or many different forms of society. He refers to early on in the document the first society as like a unit of social organization. What's the first society like that we ever came up with? Like the first version of it?
It was family.
Are you talking about like the Mesopotamian era?
Well, that's like the first civilization, you know. But Jenna has it. Other Jenna. Oh my gosh, there's two Jennas. Jenna Robinson. Yeah, is family. Family is the first kind of social unit, right? We evolved into sort of having small kind of families with, you know, a mom and a dad. You know, we're talking about like the Stone Age here, and then kids and aunts and uncles and stuff like that. That's the first kind of social unit. And he says like the family is a good example of like what a good government looks like. Like there's, you know, the old wizened people at the top. Maybe you have like elders, like grandparents, and then you have like parents, and then you have kids, right? There's a hierarchy to it. And the older you are, the more kind of wisdom and knowledge and power you have over the rest of your family. Okay. So he kind of talks then about, and it's like a long winding document. And if you tried to read this word for word, you probably had a hard time understanding what he's getting at. But he talks about liberty. He talks about like the rights of the strongest, right? The strongest members of society, whether that's a father over a family or a mother in some cases, right? Or a king over his people or a chieftain over his tribe. The kind of strongest people have the most power. But here's the kicker. Like this is where this is all getting at. People are okay with that. Like people are okay with not just being able to do whatever they want. People are okay with abiding by some kind of rule book, some kind of structure where someone tells them what to do and they do it, right? Or like, at least if you have respect for that person. Like people are okay with living in a society where they are restricted in certain freedoms, like freedom to steal or freedom to kill, right? People are okay with that. That's the thing that he's getting at here. That's called the social compact or the social contract. I'm just going to skip ahead in my questions here because I want to this is really important. There's an agreement between two parties in society, the people and government. And that government can look like different things, right? A chieftain, a king, a father, whatever. But the people agree to give up certain liberties, certain natural freedoms they have. Like I can take whatever I want at any time, or I can kill whoever I want at any time. We give up those rights, those natural freedoms, usually in the form of abiding by law. And then the government's job is to protect the people. That's the mutual, there's two parties in this relationship. And this is all societies ever, right? People give up their rights voluntarily and entrust them to the government. And in turn, the government is supposed to look out for the common good of the people. That is the social compact or the social contract. Like we call it two different. It's the same thing, right? The social contract is what kind of Rousseau refers. I'm going to say social contract from now on. It's a unwritten contract between two parties, the people and the government. So, here's the main thing to take away from Rousseau. And this is what the founding fathers of the American Revolution, and here's what they took away from Rousseau. Here's what other Enlightenment thinkers took away. That contract can be broken by a government. If a government sucks at its job of looking out for the common good, they are in violation of a sacred contract with their people. And as a result, the people then, with that contract being broken, the people have a right to rise up and replace their government with something better. That's the main takeaway. That's the main thing I want you to grab from Rousseau, that there's this idea of an unspoken contract between a government and the people. And Rousseau, it doesn't talk about it a whole lot here in the document, but the implication is if the government sucks at its job, if it goes back on its end of the contract, the people can just toss that government out the window and set up a better one. Set up a new government that serves the people. They can form a new contract. Does that make sense? Do you guys agree with that? Do you agree with this idea that there's like a contract between a government and people and we can just like overthrow the government if it does a bad job? Or does that sound kind of scary? Especially in light of last week's events. This is a very timely document in some ways. Some people legit think that they can just overthrow the government. But what do you think? Is this a bad idea? Is this a good idea? I don't know. What do you think?
I think the both ends. I think it's very situation based. I mean, you could say later, like 100 years later, or 90 years later, or whenever the Enlightenment was, first to when the French Revolution was, I would say that a lot of Enlightenment people would say that that was a morally correct thing to do. But I would say that, if you want to talk about the Haitian Revolution, a lot of people, I would say, considering that it was a slave revolt, would say that it was an immoral thing to do. I would argue.
Okay, so it's situational.
Yeah,
You can't.
I would say.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that the slave revolt was immoral. I'm just saying that's what I think a lot of people at that time would think.
Oh, absolutely, including the United States of America. And we'll probably talk about the Haitian Revolution in a week or two, because it's something that's really not taught very widely in the United States. Anyway, yeah. So Dylan's saying it's situational. It kind of depends on the moment. Is there like a red line that is like everyone can see? Like this is a definite moment when the government has gone back on its agreement with the people. Like when does this happen? When are we supposed to know when to rise up against authority? Does it just all depend on the person, on the individual? Is there like a collective moment? And like, in other words, like, how do we know when it's the moral thing to do, the good thing to do to rise up against the government? I'm gonna get arrested after talking about this in class.
Everybody has such different views that I feel like we couldn't come together as one to just agree on something.
Yeah. Okay, lots of different opinions there. We're going to talk about that in next week when we talk about the French Revolution. Oh my gosh, there are so many different ideas about, okay, we threw out the king. What do we do now? Or some people are like, no, like don't throw out the king. Don't kill the king. We need a king, even if he sucks. Because then society, like we talked about, devolves into chaos. Like once you throw out the law, then we have chaos. And guess what? That's what happened. Any other thoughts on this? Like, when is it okay to rise up against authority? Any other thoughts on this? Is it ever okay? Is it always wrong?
I think no matter the situation, there's always going to be people that think it's wrong. But I guess if the government is just extremely unjust and did you a like great disservice, it's right. But
Yeah, there's going to be people who love the government. Oh, it's working really great for me, says the capitalist who enjoys record low tax rates for the highest earners. Meanwhile, minimum wage slaves are like, no, that's no, I can't afford to live. You know, something is busted here. Yeah, there's going to be some people who, you know, the system works for them, and they're going to fight to protect their privileges, right? And this happens in every single moment in time, every single revolution that we look at, every single, like, you know, or try, even if it's not just a full out revolution, just trying to change the law. Some people will see the law as like fundamentally unjust, and other people see it as like, no, it's fine because it works for me, you know. So this is the constant struggle that we have in modern society. When is it okay to say enough is enough? There is no bright red line that tells us, oh, okay, it's okay then to just like toss out everything that keeps us together as a society and start over. Like that's tough. That's one of the modern problems, and it's something that we were dealing with last week when some people thought it was okay to try and kidnap senators and execute members of the media, and like it's absolutely bonkers that I have to talk about this in 2021. So evidently this is a timeless thing, and you can at least take away that from this class. So any other thoughts or questions on either of these documents before we move on? We've covered a lot of ground today. I know these are very abstract things, but I'm about to point you in the direction of like where to take these things. Any other thoughts or questions? Okay. Well, if you think of something, just unmute and interrupt me and let me know. What I'm going to do right now is point us to your assignment for next week then. And it's going to be the first of 6 of these throughout the semester, where you'll take a 2-week chunk of readings from the document book. And you'll be asked to write a short paper answering some questions. So I'm going to show you where to find resources in terms of this assignment. I have unlocked week 2, the week 2 module. Let me go to student view so you can see exactly what you see when you log in. So you have the week 2 module. It is now open for next week. You've got the checklist. It tells you what pages to read. We're going to be jumping right into the French Revolution and kind of why it came about. Because for all of these Enlightenment thinkers and all of them talking about like what constitutes justice and good government, it's all theoretical until the French king biffs it completely and gets his head cut off in a revolution. And it's one of the biggest revolutions in modern history. It's a bigger deal than the American Revolution. The French Revolution is a huge freaking deal. BFD. So the week 2 checklist tells you all the different things to read. At the bottom, it says upload your analysis paper 1 by the end of Friday. What does that mean? The paper prompt is down here at the bottom of the module page. It tells you the directions, right? Using the paper template, which I'll point you to in just a moment. Craft a 2 to 3 page paper, or roughly 500 to 700 words, that addresses the questions below. Use the documents from weeks 1 and 2 to answer the questions. Okay, so this is you using the documents out of this book and just these documents, right? I only want you to use Bonesana, Rousseau, and the 3 documents for next week out of that book. Okay. No outside sources, no other websites. Like, I just want you to use those things. And then you upload the paper on Blackboard. And to do that, you simply just click on this analysis paper, like where it says analysis paper 1, and it gives you a place to upload your file, whether it's a Word document or a PDF. You can also just type the paper into the text box here. So you click on that at the bottom. That's your assignment for next week. You're not doing a quiz. All you're doing is focusing on writing this essay. Now, I have also at the top of the weekly modules page. So if we go all the way back and you click on weekly modules on the menu, at the very top now, there is a folder called Analysis Paper Resources. I have recorded a video for you discussing these assignments in detail, what I'm asking for, what I want to see from you. I look over a sample paper. I've also included 2 other sample papers from last semester, from History 101, not this class, but History 101. So you can see how students have approached these things and just how you write them. There's the rubric here for how I grade, but the big important thing here is the paper template. So if you open that up, it gives you like how I want these papers to be structured, right? You have your name at the top, the class, the instructor, and then, paper number 1. 12-point font, Times New Roman, double spaced, all that jazz. So you know exactly how to structure the paper. And I talk more about like the details, interbody, conclusion, all that stuff here. So I highly encourage you to use that template to structure the paper. But what are the questions I want you to answer? Let's go back to the original assignment. The first one, you're going to be answering 2 questions in this essay using these documents. First one is, how do the Enlightenment writers put forward new ideas about justice? That's everything we talked about today. Right? To answer this question, discuss what justice meant to Bonesana, about crime and punishment, and what it meant to Rousseau, that social contract, that idea that a government is bad and unjust if it violates the will of the people. So that's everything we talked about today, right? And you just need to pick out portions of the documents to help make an argument, right? What did justice mean to Bonesana? Well, according to Bonesana on page 605, he talks about justice being the glue that holds society together, right? So you would use that as like an example in your paper. And then question number 2, we haven't talked about this yet. We're going to be talking about these things next week. What kinds of problems were plaguing France during the end of the Enlightenment period? And what solutions were put forward to address these problems? And did they include a promise to achieve greater justice in France? So basically, for next week, you're going to be writing an essay on Enlightenment ideas of justice. And this is crucial. I want you to use the documents as evidence to make your argument. Okay? I want you to like cite specific parts of the documents, and the video that I recorded talks all about that, like citing your sources. The resources I have talks about citing your sources. So you basically, like, if you include a quote by Rousseau or Bonesana, in parentheses at the end of that sentence, say, Bonesana, page 605 or something. Like that's the key here. Does all that make sense? I know that's a lot thrown at you all at once.
Book.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Are there any questions about this assignment? So it's 2 parts. You really only need to write a page on the first question and then another page on the second question. And you have more than enough to, material here to answer those two questions. But you're only using the documents out of this book, right? That we're reading this week and for next week as well. Does all that make sense? I hope all that is clear. Okay. The point of these assignments, and look, if you're not a strong writer, if you're a little worried about writing a bunch of like small papers in this class, I am less worried about the content, and I'm more looking for that you are using evidence to make an argument, right? Like I'm concerned. The only thing that I'm really like going to be super stickler on is like not so much grammar, not so much structure, although I do want to see those things, but it's you using historical documents that we're talking about in class, using them as evidence to make an argument in these essays. I'm arguing that, Bonesana's idea of justice was important because, whatever. And then you use Bonesana to back up what you're saying. That's what I'm concerned with, because so many people in contemporary society just go around making stuff up. They don't cite their sources. The idea of, fake news and different information and all that stuff is rampant. And this is the main takeaway from this class is that you make reasoned arguments by using facts and evidence. That's what it means to be a college educated person. Okay. And we're practicing that through these assignments. All right. Well, that's what I have for you guys today. Any other last minute questions or concerns you can think of? Okay. Well, for next week, I encourage you to watch that video in the resources folder to get a handle on what to do for these assignments. I break it down. I walk through a sample paper with you guys. Take a look at the sample papers from other students to see how they've structured their papers. And that even though the topics are different, you get a really good idea of how to construct one of these things. All right. Well, for Tuesday, we'll be talking about the French Revolution. So please do the textbook readings for Tuesday. I will see you guys here for that. We'll go over French Revolution. We'll start seeing kings get their heads cut off. It's very exciting. All right. That's it, guys. Have a good weekend. I'll see you next week. Take care.